Welcome to today's face. It's a new day, we need a new face. Hi, if you are new to me, to my content, I'm Rosie Quartz and I'm a variety content creator and streamer. We're all about putting things on our face that make brain go brrrr, just for the sake of serotonin. However, I also like to talk about some other topics like mental health, deconstruction of faith. I have special interest in like psychology, manipulative wellness, that sort of thing, because I was raised in a very high demand over self evangelical culture. And our subject matter for today is actually along the lines of like, you ever have those moments where you are trying to go to sleep but you can't because your brain decides to just replay the cringiest, worst moments of your youth, like something very embarrassing you did in middle school? Oh, come on. I don't know why they've practically child-proof these things to get into. That's what we're going to be working with today. It is very pretty, very, very vibrant, which if all goes well, if all goes according to plan, that's what's going to happen to my face. I want to look like a rainbow macaw. One of those moments happened to me, except I was wide awake and just scrolling through my For You page on Instagram. I don't know if it's still a For You page, if it's Instagram, because that's more of like a TikTok thing, but my For You page, when I happened to stumble across something that it hit, it hurt. It hurt me physically to behold. Now, something that I do like to tackle a lot in my content, especially because I am a side quest creator. Side quest. And I say side quest because like in a very like increasingly, I guess, aggressive towards like more certain types of content, like it's becoming so very intense. Like there's just been like this rise of very like aggressively puritanical values that influences guidelines, which means that like a lot of us who are in the circles that we are, that make the content that we do, we have to be very and how we talk about it and just kind of like hope you get the message. Hence why I say like I have this side quest for it. So it is very important to me because like even though we're seeing just like this really aggressive rise of like these traditional values, the thing to me is that I'm very much about confronting traditional values because that was the environment that raised me. My whole life was saturated in it. My mom, grandmother, great-grandmother, like all the women in my family were trad wives, stay-at-home moms, that sort of thing. Like I grew up surrounded by trad wife women and I saw firsthand the consequences that it had on their bodies. And when people are like, what really is the issue if you choose this for yourself? I mean, like you can choose it for yourself, but the environment I was raised in, it was very much indoctrination of this is the only way to be a healthy woman, like a worthy woman, a woman that's like worth something, is to emulate all of these different things. And that's kind of where the problem lies, is that guarantee of wellness. If you just emulate all of this crap, you just like where you emulate all of these like high control of yourself behaviors. I think modesty, purity, spicy activity, that is one area that is very like intensely scrutinized. There's like a lot of emphasis in the indoctrination to convince you that the only healthy way to be is if you have like this good Christian marriage, you wait till marriage to do anything spicy with each other. Like basically like your life is falling apart, you're damaged goods, blah 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 blah. A loose woman with loose morals or whatnot if you do not follow that exact protocol, which is not the case because like the human experience is so vast, it's so wide and varied. You can have any type of sort of life, quality of life, because like this world is not this reality, I guess. My gosh, I'm gonna sound like one of those spiritual guru people. But like we're literally just like more on the side of anything random could happen. You could live your life as close to your chest as possible you could do all of the safety things and still get hit by a bus, right? Like you could eat as healthfully as possible and still end up with cancer. Like a lot of this stuff comes down to an element of trying to control the outcome, trying to prevent bad things from happening to us, which is why a lot of people are susceptible to stuff like Adventism, which is what I grew up in. So when I stumbled across this particular Instagram reel.
Okay. Bye.
Oh boy, the soul cancer, the soul cancer that I experienced. It hurts me physically to think about, because that sort of attitude was very much me. And I think with like what hits the worst, like if you are more of like a secular person, somebody who's more like sexually liberated, when you see stuff like that about people who drop something like that, it feels very arrogant, it feels very self-serving, because it is. It's very much that attitude of, oh, I want literature if it's got smut in it. That's the only way I want my literature. If somebody says something like that, it's hyperbolic, it's humor, and I'll come back to that. But it just like, it hurts to watch, because I would say somewhere around like 15 to 17, that was when I would say that like the peak of my loyalty to Adventism and purity culture was, to being like the good Christian girl. And that's when I had that attitude, where I understand when I see it that I am looking at least in my opinion, it is essentially reinforcing your own identity by being the person with better self-control. You're like, oh, you can only read literature when it's got smut in it. Well, I can read a vast majority of literature because I have better impulse control than you do. And the cringy part of that is, of course, is that person who says that, like, typically, I guess there's some people out there where they're literally like, I only ever read smut. For that person, they're just exaggerating for the sense of humor, right? And then when you go and you take it so literally, oh, I can read more things than you can. You basically, like, it's just like, I am more literate than you because you're a filthy degenerate. When the reality is that they miss the joke and they miss the humor of it all. And I think that's part of like where the cringe of it is for me, is that whole like realizing that when I was that person, when I was that good little evangelical girl, and I would have those moments of like, well, you need to get your self-control under control. When I would have those moments, it was really just me missing some vital social cues, which is it, and that's very much where the embarrassment lies, is realizing that you were so far out of touch. I think it's like for a lot of people who leave evangelical spaces, is realizing just how out of touch with social cues that you tended to be. However, of course, like when it comes to content like that, where you see somebody being like, corn, what's that? Algorithms. Corn addiction isn't cute. So there's actually three main problems with that type of content. And the first being blatant misinformation in regards to addictions. First and foremost, while I studied psychology at a post-secondary level for about 6 years, I'm not a licensed counselor or therapist, and even if I was, I'm not your counselor or therapist. All of this stuff, like, I talk about because I think it is important for us peasants to talk about this stuff, to be aware of it and come at it from like a grounded perspective, like taking the research that is done and applying it effectively to our own lives. And of course, to back that up, because boss babes always cite their sources, the NPR just came out with a study, a very comprehensive study in regards to, or article in regards to anti-corn movements and like basically anti-self-pleasure movements, anti-corn stuff, and talking about, well, basically the dangers of that misinformation, because a lot of it comes from biases, and it comes from people who are doing like health and wellness grifts, where they convince you things like, hey, if you don't self-pleasure, then you will be more powerful, like retain your semen to retain your strength kind of bullshit, which is not, that's not how that works. Always please look at the actual research and not like these weirdo alpha males on Reddit. However, I will link that article because it is really good to keep yourself informed, because misinformation about things like schmecks, self-pleasure, adult content, right? The consumption of that type of content. Misinformation about that contributes to biases that put like the lives of people at risk who are in that industry, and it also can contribute to biases that like basically create a sense of shame around yourself, around your own body. And shame and guilt are reinforcers, not deterrents. They often don't do great things for us. And so like when you actually like look at the topic of like corn addiction, one of the problems you see is that it's very hard to classify it as an addiction. Even in the comment section, OP conceded the research in regards to it is inconclusive, however still went on with their full chest to be like, this is an addiction. So a lot of the stuff surrounding it, yes, the research is inconclusive. One of the main reasons being, if you look into it, is that if like let's say you're consuming spicy content and then you stop consuming spicy content, you can't really scientifically measure a difference in your brain the same way that you can if you were to like let's say consume a certain type of substance and then you come off of that substance. You can measure the difference in your brain, and that's very important to the scientific process, to the scientific method. However, what you may be able to measure instead is behavior, and that's why with like a lot of this stuff they're saying you may be looking at like a myriad of other factors rather than addiction, because it's behavioral. And in the comments, this person had a little bit of a confirmation bias where they were like, even though the research is inconclusive, it is invalidating to everybody who is saying that they do have an addiction and that this has negatively impacted their lives. Now, my counterpoint to that is that, first of all, if we do not actually have a conclusive diagnosis of corn addiction, then all of these people claiming to have this diagnosis are not actually, like, it's not the same as if you were to say, like, I've been diagnosed with PTSD, I've been diagnosed with BPD or something. Like, that research is inconclusive over there. And what you have also is, for a lot of people who are claiming that they have an addiction, that they've been negatively impacted by this stuff, a lot of it is self-reports. Self-reports as well, based on like shame and guilt, ingrained, like socialized shame and guilt. And they'll be like, well, I consumed this content and now I feel guilty about it and now my mental health is shit. That's not the same as having an addiction. You also have people who are claiming it based on like Reddit forums and things like that, like claiming a self-report for an addiction without actually having a diagnosis from a licensed therapist, psychologist, and whatnot. Especially where we're also seeing that like there have been schmecks counselors taking advantage of the misinformation to basically sell like addiction recovery stuff, and then ended up causing a lot of harm to people's lives. Okay, so we're just doing like mid all of this commentary, just doing like a quick little contour moment with the concealer, just mapping out those highlighted points, my face. I'm still trying to figure out like the best way to do that on my chin. So I just like such a weird little like newfie chin. So with the results of that research being inconclusive, to jump on your social media platform and do this whole thing of like, oh, your corn addiction isn't cute, girly pop. Well, girly pop, I hate to break it to you, but also you can't go around just diagnosing people. Even if you are a doctor or a therapist, the people you diagnose are your clients who have signed up to work with you. It is super, super unethical to go around diagnosing people as a civilian. Like, you cannot just like look at another person and be like, you know what, based on your behavior, I think that you have narcissistic personality disorder. Or like to look at this other person and be like, you know what, based on your behavior, I think you're borderline. We can't go around doing that to each other, because that's just your personal confirmation bias, and we are not the experts in each other's lives. When it comes to mental health, diagnosis, that sort of thing, that happens with due process, with experts and people who are licensed. Particularly like with the licensing, you want that, because if there is some kind of malpractice, they are registered with somebody that you can report them to. And of course, disclaimer, I am aware the mental health process has its hang-ups, it's got its stuff. And with self-diagnosis, I'm not referring Like, I know there's some stuff right now happening for like autism, ADHD. We're not going into that, but you can't really like look at another person. Like, you might have some suspicions about yourself. You'd be like, that includes me. There's definitely some suspicions of neurospicy. However, that's like your own process that you are picking up about yourself. You can't look at another person and be like, you absolutely have ADHD. You absolutely have autism. You can't look at another person and be like, you have a corn addiction. That's not appropriate. So you kind of have like with this type of content that really pushes like the idea of, oh, you read smut, like you're just like this filthy degenerate, and I am so much more enlightened than you. I'm so much more competent than you because I have my brain together in such a way that I have impulse control. And it feeds into this idea that normal healthy behavior, including schmexual behavior, it just pathologizes it unnecessarily. And what you're doing is you're contributing to biases that make us look at our own behavior as inherently unhealthy when quite frankly it's just normal stuff that people do. Like, if you look at like cognitive development for a human, it is normal for adults. Like, you hit a certain level of development, it's normal for adults to engage in schmexual behavior. It's normal for them to create and consume content that reflects that spicy activity that we engage in, because it's part of our brains, it's part of our lives, and our brains like to create things that reflect our lived experience. That's why spicy content exists. Like, it's our brains creating and reflecting back and being consumed. Like, that's normal. It is so very normal. And if somebody is consuming to like a pathological level, that's something where you take it to a licensed professional to address and talk about. What they've noted is definitely like this tendency to, like, if somebody is consuming an overabundance of, like, let's say spicy content, if it wasn't spicy content, it might be video games. If it's not video games, it might be pushing too hard in sports or something. Like, that type of like compulsive consumption of something, it's not that the spicy content is inherently gripping and addictive, it's just that person may have like a tendency to engage too hard in the consumption of something in general, and that's their brain that they are working with in their own capacity, because we just have this tendency to be so arrogant and confident in speaking for other people's lives and what's healthiest for them, which is definitely something where I would love to see that change. I would love to see that change in the future, where we start honoring boundaries around each other's health, because number one, we don't owe each other health, and number two, we're not the experts in each other's health, and we really need to find, at least in my opinion, better ways of developing a sense of self than basically this idea of like, I am more control of myself than you are, I eat healthier than you do, my brain's healthier than yours because I do all of this stuff. That's just arrogance. That's really just, that's not a sense of self built on like a core sense of value. That's a sense of self that's built in how much work you put into yourself, when humans are not constant self-improvement projects, and that's exhausting. And it also sets us up for like, at least to me, when we do this thing where we only value ourselves when we are like constantly self-improving, is that it puts us in the mindset that people who don't work on themselves as hard as we do are not as valuable as we are. Like, it's easier to throw people away. It's easier to regard people as damaged and stuff like that, which can create biases that mean that like people in certain groups, like I know for those who are considered like in the overweight category, because like there's this idea that they're just not trying hard enough, and it creates biases, and that can mean they don't get access to the healthcare they need, because it's just a matter of like, oh, you have this health problem because you have weight on your body, you need to lose that weight and you'll be fine. And then what happens is that crucial information about their health gets missed, to the detriment of that person's health long term, and sometimes even their life. A lot of this stuff about in the spicy content creator world, this idea that you're just not working hard enough on yourself can mean that like even the biases can go up right into the law, where your safety is put at risk because law enforcement isn't taking you seriously. They're like, you are the problem, so we're not going to help keep you safe. All right, so we have a little bit of base here. I'm gonna start working on my eyes, starting with like the white. And with like a lot of makeup stuff, makeup channels, they talk like, there's a lot about like the product and things like that. And I'm not a sell you type of girly, sell you stuff type of girly. If you guys have questions about like what I'm using and whatnot, I'll put it in the description if you would like to to cover it. I like to have like meatier discussions in my content. I definitely sit in content where like the whole point is like, oh, I'm using this product and that product. I'm not shitting on that type of content. It's just not, it's not what makes my brain go brrr in the content that I produce to do that. But I want to start with like a white inner corner and then kind of build up the color from there. And the thing is, when it comes to like content where they're just like, oh, you have a corn addiction, it reminds me very much of the time where, and this was back when I was living with my ex out in Ontario. I was in like the same city as my in-laws, and one of them was a pastor. There was a lot of effort because like at that point in time I had started to really move away from Adventism. I had not gone to church in a while. I considered like attending church to be pretty traumatizing. However, I'd like married back into Adventism, and Adventism is a communal type of church. Yeah, that was such a smart move on my part, but that's a story for another time. So my ex insisted that we let this one girl into our, like the friend group that we were building. I love to host. We had movie nights a lot of games nights, things like that. I was very uncomfortable with this girl. She took the Adventist theology so seriously. Like she went full LARP with it, was very obsessed with anything to do with the church's prophetess. Because yeah, I grew up believing in a prophetess. Yeah, if you're ever wondering if like the organization that you're about to join is kind of like a cult, if they have any kind of prophetess, sus. Very sus. But my ex insisted that we be a good influence on her, maybe like help her deconstruct a little bit, not take it like so intensely. And I was like, that doesn't seem like my job, but okay, fine, I conceded. Welcomed into our home, and for a few months she was there interacting with us. She was just like, of course, she's in her mid-20s by that point, and still like very naive, like reminded me of myself at 15. And that's one of the critiques of those organizations, is just like there's a noted lack of development as a person in regards to like hitting certain like social things. And I definitely noticed that for myself. Even to this day, there's a lot that I'm working on where I feel like I'm so behind everyone else my age. Okay, so yeah, we're going for yellow to orange, and then into like pink and purple, I think. So everything seemed fine for a while. And I was like, I'll just like, I'll be nice to her, I'll be polite. And then I went away. When I came back from that, my ex was just freaking out. I was like, what happened? What's wrong? And he's like, well, this girl went to the youth pastor and told her all of this stuff about us. And one of the things that she had reported back to the youth pastor at his church, and like his parents' church, is that I was an alcoholic because I had a bottle of apothic red wine next to my stove that I cooked pasta with. I mean, like, I guess she was right in a way. I did have a problem. I still do, however, and if you can guess, the thing that I really could overconsume with zero regrets is pasta. That's where it was. But no, she missed that part completely. It went straight for like my one little bottle of red wine. And that's the thing, is that to somebody who's in that very cloistered environment where you're told something like drinking alcohol is inherently sinful and whatnot, just seeing a bottle of red wine is so sensational. You're just like, oh my gosh. And it's kind of sad. It is very sad. Like for most secular people, you're just like, yeah, drinking a glass of wine with supper, that's pretty normal. Like that's just like a nice little treat. It's like a reward. And so to view it from a perspective of such intensity is very odd. It's odd and unhinged. And so I'm like, this person is just like, your corn addiction isn't cute girly pop. It's like, no, you missed the joke. it was a joke. The whole thing of like, yeah, I just want my content with some smut in it, which is actually okay. Like, I personally am of the opinion that tibbies make everything better. However, that's just a personal preference. So maybe I'm putting my own bias on blast, and I'm just like, yeah, I love a touch of spice in my literary content. That's because it's fun and normal and part of the human experience. I think to me, it's like when you get that extremism of like, there's so much schmecks in movies and stuff. Yes, because adults fuck. Like, you don't see people complaining about, oh my gosh, they drink water in every movie. Oh my god, is it really necessary for people to eat food in every movie? Is it necessary for people to walk? Like, the reason you see schmecks in movies and in literature and media is because it's part of the human experience, it's part of what humans do. And it's really kind of my take on it is not like we need to be more controlled about it and stuff. It's more like, why are we so weird about a normal thing that we do? Like, what is it about humans? However, we can also be this like neurotic and controlling about anything. You got people who are just like, who are like this about food, who demonize different types of food, and you're just like, it's just food. We don't need to be this intense about it, and what other people put in their bodies isn't your problem, so what are we having this discussion about? And so when somebody is like that intense about it, it's like, well, yeah, so first of all, it's misinformation. Number two, you're diagnosing people when you're not supposed to be. And number three, the thing is, like, we're very social creatures. Like, the whole thing with humans is that we are so interconnected. We seek connection with each other. And this whole, like, this intense reaction of, I have better self-control than you do, is very isolating. And it took me a very long time to put together why, like, I was growing up in a church environment where they emphasized how important community was. Community kept you accountable. Community was part of your quality of life. However, I felt so lonely and isolated. Like, the best way I could describe my childhood is lonely, even though I grew up in a community that knew me from infancy onward. I'd known these people for well over a decade of my life. So I was like, I have this community, I have family and whatnot, but like, I feel awful and lonely and disconnected all of the time. And as I deconstructed from that environment, I kind of put two and two together that the reason being an Adventist and being like a good Christian was so lonely and isolating is that the only people I could interact with were those in the in-group who were just as controlling over themselves as I was. Like, I couldn't interact normally with normal people because every interaction would just end with me and my beliefs shitting on them, and so why would they want to hang out with me? So if I made friends outside, like, I would make friends outside the Adventist church, and then things would happen in their lives. A friend would get pregnant, or a friend would start drinking or something, and like doing normal adult things, and my reaction to it would be very arrogant and self-serving, and people had a hard time being around that, and you're kind of left there wondering like, what is going on? And then you can't really connect with the other people who believe the same things you do, because it's just a matter of time before, let's say with mental health, right? Like, you're trying to connect with people, you're struggling, and you're like, I'm going to go to my community because I'm struggling with depression, only to get absolutely shit on because they'll take your depression as the opportunity to reinforce for themselves how good they're doing and how good their mental health is, because they've worked so hard. And instead of receiving support, you'll find yourself on the receiving end of people congratulating themselves that they're doing better than you are. And that's very isolating. So you learn not to really connect. You learn not to talk to people in your community about what's going on with you. And that can snowball into like some really awful situations if, like, let's say you get married and you're experiencing some not very cash money things from your spouse, but you can't go to your community, you can't tell them what's going on because you know they're not going to help keep you safe. It's going to be, oh, you're just not serving your husband the way you should be, and all these women around you congratulating themselves that they're not being because they're serving their husbands right. And that's kind of one of the really hard things about those communities, is that I was sold, like it was sold to me throughout my entire life. It was like, this is the way it is, this is what you're supposed to have, this is what community is supposed to look like, only to be like, whew, this is kind of awful. Like, I don't feel connected to my community. I feel uneasy with my community. I feel at odds with my community. I feel like they're not going to support me. They're just going to use, like, that's the hard part about evangelical community, at least in my experience, is that it's not interconnective. It's actually, it causes a lot of social friction because you're always in competition with each other. You're always in competition to see who can emulate the value system the best. And if it's been sold to you as a guarantee of wellness, if you're not doing well, then clearly you're not trying hard enough. Okay, so we have a little bit of something going on here. I'm not complaining about it. I think that's like the nice part about deconstructing from that stuff and like walking away from it, is finding yourself more at ease with what you're dealing with. Like, it's, if you're struggling with, like, let's say your mental health, for example, if you've left a church community, it's no longer a test of how hard you worked. It becomes a question of, okay, if we're experiencing this, where could it possibly be coming from? How do we address it effectively without making it an ego thing? You know, inner corners are such a struggle ever since I got my eyes relasered, because my eyes are always watering into the corners, which just erases everything I was trying to do. And this is why you don't forget your daily sacrifices to your local eldritch deity, because otherwise they don't bless your glamour endeavors. I should probably put some type of like color along the top. Today's gonna be a rough one. I'm trying to put my face on for streaming today, and of course, like, if you guys are like into all of the stuff that I'm talking about, want to just like literally discuss it with me in real time, I do like just chatting portions in my live streams, so that's definitely one opportunity that you can take to interact. And also, if you have other topic ideas for me to ramble about while I put my face on, or even ideas of what to put on my face while I ramble, feel free to drop those in the comments. That's just very fun, welcome interaction. Today is going to be a little bit of a rough one because my body has decided that this is the week for Satan's sacrificial waterfall, and it's decided that because I missed one birth control pill, and it wasn't even like I missed the day, I got to it in the evening rather than the morning like I usually do, and my body was like, let's go to DEFCON 1. That's one of the funniest things to me, like having grown up in that environment that was very intense or strict about gender roles, and how not just like the roles and the behavior, like you need to cook, be in the kitchen, cleaning, laundry, all of that stuff. It wasn't just the behavior, but it was also the aesthetic of the behavior. So women need to be feminine, they need to be flowy, which is that's super weird to me, because number one, the labor surrounding being in the kitchen, the labor surrounding doing loads and loads of laundry, the labor of childbirth, none of that's pretty. None of it is aesthetic, and it's really funny to see like trad wives LARPing on social media, because you're like, I remember watching like my mom, grandmother, great-grandmother do this labor. It wasn't pretty, it's hot, it's steamy, it's sweaty. And I mean, like, my biggest critique for being a trad wife myself is 2 words, and that is joint inflammation. That labor builds up in your body over time, and you're supposed to be pretty while you do it. And not only that, the whole thing where it's just like, women need to be soft and feminine. Get wrecked, because if we're supposed to emulate all of those traits all of those time, like real women are feminine, why is it that once a month our body just like opens up the portholes? Your uterus is just out here like, unleash the hordes of hell. So let's see, we also need eyebrows. I need eyebrows. We've gotten halfway through this process. I'm gonna take this little contour stick and do the thing. where we pretend that we have cheekbones. And also, like, if you yourself grew up in kind of like a stricter purity-based environment, feel free to share with me like your thoughts on this, what it was like. Are there still some things about like modesty and purity you agree with? Were there things that like impacted you, your sense of self? Or maybe great, not so great? Because I'm definitely like, I'm definitely not one of those people who is like, oh my gosh, you still like some stuff about it, like how dare you? I would say that my personal experience, at least with like being a Christian and being Adventist, was negative in every aspect of the word. Like, I'm very hard pressed to think about anything in that experience that was innately positive for me. I would say like my conclusion about it is I really, really wish that I hadn't grown up in a Christian household, an evangelical, like not just Adventist, not just evangelical, like even just Christian. I really wish I had not been exposed to sin theology. So that's the thing, a lot of people think like you leave that environment because the people disappointed you, but you're supposed to be there for Jesus. No, it's actually like my issue was not the people, my issue was Jesus and the sin theology itself. For me, it came down to the theology and not agreeing with the theology, and I didn't like the impact the theology, like living out that theology, had on my life. Like my take on human behavior, and when you see stuff that's kind of like shitty from other humans, my take on it is more from like a psychology standpoint now than it is from a sin standpoint. I do not identify as a Christian anymore because I do not think that the concept of sin is an adequate or effective explanation for human behavior, and nor do I think it's effective for addressing certain types of situations. When if we're talking about harm reduction, for example, I think that like based on research and stuff like that, what we see is that sin theology can actually contribute to very harmful behavior rather than effectively address it, and that's where my stance is on it. Is, and of course, like you can't force people to no longer believe in something like sin, but I do think it's important to openly like talk about it, critique it, and things like that, because if we're going to ask what's effective for harm reduction, then we do need to critique stuff like sin. Like if somebody is using the concept of sin as a form of harm reduction, and we can look at that and say, well, actually, we're not seeing effective harm reduction as a result of this belief system, then maybe like we can deconstruct from it, move away from it, and start looking at some things that are more effective. Only for more of like a blocky brow. At least at this point in time, I don't really like fuck around with my eyebrows that much, because honestly, it's so much work. It is so much work and effort to bleach your brows, erase your brows, all of that stuff. And to a certain degree, yeah, doing it once in a while is great, but as somebody like, I'm really into makeup, and I think that it should also be like, it should be accessible, and doing that much work for that all the time, whereas like a regular erasing eyebrows is a regular feature. I'm like, I don't have the range for that. I just kind of like diffuse at the very top. Let blend. I'm hoping things just get a little bit more comfortable today, but you never know. Uterus is a cryptid unto itself, and it does what it wants. It does its own thing. There's a very specific brush that I want, and I can't find it. This is why I'm supposed to like reorganize everything after I've used it, so I can easily find what I'm looking for again. Do I listen to myself? No, I do not. We'll contour the nose, and actually try to remember to do the other eyebrow. I'm definitely doing like these little vlogs as more of like a get ready with me, or of like watching me learn the process, because that's what it is. It is very much me learning this stuff as I go. I'm not presenting it as tutorials per se, letting you know what I'm doing as I do it in case somebody else wants to try. But all of this is very new. It's very new for me. I started picking it up on my own during the pandemic. Also, like, I do recommend trying out makeup for those who are healing from religious trauma. It is a very satisfying experience to just like if you've grown up in this environment that tells you you don't have a choice, like God owns your body, all of that stuff, it's very healing to do makeup on the daily, because it's a very concrete act of you doing for your body. Like you decide, you're like, I want green on my face. Like that sounds so simple, but it's a very definitive act of you deciding what goes on in your body, what's happening with your body. And my personal little theory about why evangelical churches don't like makeup is for that reason of essentially you deciding what's going on with your body. It's a form of self-expression, identity, and when you're in those types of environments, they don't really want you to have an established sense of self. Like that does not meet certain end goals for them about what they want to see from you. Okay, I think we're doing pretty good here. Other eyebrow, oh my gosh. Me out here completely forgetting that I have 2 eyebrows. Alright, and so we're going to, I added a little bit of like a glitter highlight to the brow just to try to diffuse the colors. I really like going for ombre type of looks like this. I would never ever describe my aesthetic as clean girly. I think I'm one of those people who finds like the clean girl aesthetic very nice to look at, but I am a color gremlin at heart. I wouldn't say, yeah, I'm definitely not like a clean aesthetic girly. I'm like a lo-fi. I would say I'm a lo-fi girly. You can probably notice like a lot of like if I'm doing an Insta story or whatnot, it's all lo-fi. There's just something about like the aesthetic of lo-fi that's very much my brain, which I kind of like attribute to having synesthesia, which for me is like, I have a few different forms of it, but essentially it's like your senses are a little like, let's say you have sound, sight, and like the neurons cross just a little bit, you get like a very interesting combination of sensory input. So for me, when I hear sound, I get a color response in my brain, and I get very drawn to the color response of like a lot of lo-fi, house, EDM, like bass boosted stuff as well. If it's rock, scream type of stuff, rock yes, screamo no, because then like the color just turns to like, the more shrill and screamy something gets, the closer to just pure static that it goes. So it's just not as aesthetically pleasing, although I can like appreciate the vocals. We're just gonna back to that. But yeah, when it comes to just, it's so hard to watch like the purity based content as an adult who is no longer in like a very evangelical environment, because it's just, you realize just how out of touch that you were with other people, with science, with having just like an actual grounded sense of health, especially when it comes to like modesty and stuff, because so much of what a lot of the messaging in regards to modesty and purity is like a religious or spiritual association and not a medical one, not one that has like peer-reviewed research around it, because so much of it is like has to do with like your soul, and you can't scientifically measure soul stuff. So when a lot of people come at you like, you need to cover up, women need to be modest, they're doing this thing where like they're using AI to cover women's bodies, and it's like, wow, a little control freak, aren't you? But that's like, cover up a woman all you want with AI. Like if she's a hoe at heart, she like, you can't take the hoe out of the soul. No amount of AI is going to change the fact that at heart that's what she wants for herself. A little bit of like graffiti there on top of her body, like that's so weird. What a weird thing to do. Alright, so we're also gonna add some eyeliner to this. Alright, look at that sharp wing over there. And something you'll probably notice in my content is that there are a few things when I do my makeup that you might see other makeup people do. However, I've elected There are a few things I intentionally avoid. Like one of them is like really fucking with like the lash waterline. After getting laser eye surgery, I learned that there are very small oil glands like in your lash line that keep your eyes lubricated. And I don't like to do things. My eyes are already dry from the laser eye surgery, so I don't like to put product over that. Like there's some things where I'm like, it's okay. Like while it might make things look a little bit tighter, a little bit more like all covered, you don't have to. Like it is okay not to hit like that level of everything is so like covered, because I think like it's important, at least for me, like my take with stuff like makeup is that you should be aware of various things going on with your body. So you'll find like I think a lot of people talk about the importance of skin and taking care of your skin, but I don't see a lot of people talking about like you literally have like an exposed, like your eyes are right here and all of like the stuff around your eyes, and I don't really see a lot of people in makeup talking about eye care. Like you're putting a lot of product like right here, and a lot of like the powders, like the ink and the things going into your eyes, and how that might literally impact your cornea, the blood vessels, the pores. Like you know how like awful it is to clog a pore, like you have like an ingrown hair, clogged pores, clogged oil ducts in your eyes, also not great. All right, doing that little bit of a cat's eye over here. So yeah, I just want something very, very pretty, very colorful. I gotta figure what I want to do with the under eye as well. Okay, breathe. Yeah, no pressure when it comes to doing that eyeliner. Yeah, super funny to me, like going back to like how a lot of stuff about modesty, the type of like spicy content you consume, things like that, like a lot of it does come down to the ideas of spiritual wellness, where like spiritual crosses over into the like medical, where it technically really should not be. I'll tell you all this stuff about like, I have a mutual over on X, is this what we're calling it now? Twitter. And someone was up in her comment section saying that she was a damaged woman. And I'm just like, the way that like all of this bias, like spiritual wellness bias around women's bodies, their body count, stuff like that, like it leads to people being very comfortable with some unhinged perspectives. Going up to, like, could you imagine going up to someone in real life and being like, you are a damaged person, you're inherently damaged? Like, it's just as unhinged to say that online. Like, it's such a weird thing, because you're just like, based on my idea of wellness, you're damaged. But it's also just as arrogant as that whole like, you have an addiction to this thing, and I know that because I don't engage in the behavior you do. But it's like, it's such a weird thing to do. You're just like, just walk up to somebody and be like, you're damaged. But the thing is, like, let's say like as a woman, you have a body count of like 10, 20, 35, 50, 200 people, and somebody is out here being like, you're a damaged person, but you literally just, you get up in the morning, same as they do. You get up, you drink your coffee, same as they do. You like, your brain's still there. It's almost like that bias has this idea that, I don't know, like you as a person just start degrading, and it's like, no, actually, brain's still here. I'm still here. Like everything, all of the neurons, all the like, it's all still here. Nothing fundamentally altered or changed. And they're like out here pitying you when, quite frankly, you're just having the same lived experience as they are. You're like, I'm still here. I'm seeing the news. I'm living my life, making friends, going out and experiencing life, traveling. Like, it's, what are you talking about? Like when they're out here calling you damaged, and they're out here calling you like this, that, and the other, you're just like, what are you talking about? What? What is... like, how did you get here? What was the math to this conclusion when, and this is why, like, it's so very important to confront your own biases about health and ask yourself whether or not you have this conclusion because, like, you saw the research on it and there was critique back and forth and it's peer reviewed, or whether or not you got to that conclusion about health based on, like, a spiritual superstition. And that was something where, like, when it comes to, like, I don't give a shit about stuff like body count because neuroplasticity, cellular regeneration, humans are not objects of depreciating value. That's not how we function. Like, any interaction you have with a new person just adds to your neural network. It doesn't detract from it. You've had a new experience. It's an added part to your brain now. So for people to be out here being like, you're used up. No, I've literally added to my brain. I haven't detracted from it. Like, how did you get here? But it's stuff that, like, I don't operate that way anymore. A lot of this stuff, like, the person I was before, the person who would have said something like, your corn addiction isn't cute, sweetie, in response to a joke. Like, I'm not that person anymore because, number one, that's unhinged. That's such a weird... It took me a long time to figure out, like, it took me an embarrassingly long time to figure out just exactly why that's such a weird way to respond to people. You can't be a likable person and do that and interact that way. I think I want to do blue for the lower lash. This is like a contrasting color. And it's just like maybe a little bit of pink. I think overall just letting go of that purity stuff is so much easier on my own mental health, my own sense of self-esteem, because it's kind of just over dramatic to a certain degree. Just all of these ideas about body count and stuff like that. Like, it's so over the top. It's so much easier. I found, at least for myself and my personal experience, it's so much easier on your body and on your system when you're not in a state of high alert over yourself and your behavior and always being like, oh, if my worth is like this morality, if my worth is my modesty and my purity, then I always have to be on guard. I always have to be vigilant over myself. Like, this is my self-worth, and if my self-worth and if my inherent worth as a person can go down, literally inherently go down based on, like, whether or not my shoulders are out and I'm sleeping with multiple people, like, that's rough. That's a rough way to live, which I can attest to because I was living that way and it was exhausting. It was so much, and it was unnecessarily, at least my experience with, like, modesty culture is that it's unnecessarily intense for a superstitious reason and not a grounded in a scientific reality type of reason. Because, like, all of this stuff where they're telling you, like, you need to be like schmexually committed to one guy or else all of this stuff will happen. No, it doesn't. I'll just be like, your worth and all this stuff will go down. No, it doesn't. Like, you literally sleep with another person and you've slept with another person and now you have a new life experience. Like, all of the stuff that they tell you will automatically happen if you don't live this modest, pure life, like, it doesn't happen. And that's just superstition. Like, when they tell you all of this stuff will happen, it's guaranteed to happen. No, there are plenty of people with, like, a high body count who went on to live a healthy, fulfilled life and a loved life. Like, they went on to have, like that's just, they had a life that was full. And then there's some people with a high body count who had an empty life, like they died unsatisfied. But there's plenty of people who did the modest, pure thing who died fully satisfied with it. And then there's plenty, and having worked senior care, I can attest to this, there are plenty of people who lived the pure, modest, nuclear family, traditional family life who died miserable. It's not a guarantee of health, because when they tell you that, like, this is the guarantee, marry this way, have schmex this way, be modest this way, and it will equal happiness. No, it does not automatically. It might equal happiness for some people, but there's also a good chance of misery. And that's what happens when you go around guaranteeing wellness, and we probably should not be doing that. Don't know why, but, like, whenever I do that lower lash thing, one ends up being, like, more this way and one more down. I don't know why I keep doing this. Maybe I want to do a little bit of blue to balance that out. So let's take one of, like, the wet liners. Let's try. Do I know how this will turn out or if I'll like it? No. No, I do not. Okay, maybe I'll do in Ombre fade, because this is very light baby blue. So I might try making it darker. I got like a little wet liner palette. Ooh, I like that. Alright, so we're just gonna finish up the rest of it, kind of do like a finished look. I'm thinking I'll probably keep this top for today. It was like a really cute little bodysuit that I found at Livy & Rose for 13 bucks. I had somebody ask on Insta like where I get my like the laundry and bodysuits from, and Livy & Rose is typically where I end up going because there is lots of like overstock sales happening like year round. There's always. So I'll typically like just like right for the back where the sales part is. Okay, so I'm very much liking this. I like this will be a really nice stream look for today. So I'll probably be going live. I'll go live on Twitch. I've been trying to go live in the afternoons. My usual schedule is like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm also live. Like I'm allowed to cross-platform stream, which is really cool. Finally. So streaming to both places, which means that on this channel you can go over into the live section and watch the live streams back. And that is pretty cool. Also lots of like thank yous, good things to people who have been supporting me, especially as I had to take a little bit of an extended break, slowly coming back into stuff. So thank you to those who supported me on places like Patreon, Ko-Fi, all of that good stuff. Those are places where it goes right back into the cosplays, into the makeup, into basically it's like investing in your content creator to get cool content in the future. So thank you very much to those who are doing that. And of course, you do the things with the buttons. If you would like to follow along with more of this content in the future, I'm just going to finish up and do like a final look here. Right, I didn't actually have a wig that would match like this, like the more vibrant color scheme, so I think we're gonna go with like a neutral brunette type of wig. This is one of like my favorite ones actually, just because it's such a really nice lace front. Needs to be combed out though. We'll see how well this works. The wig that I was wearing on Monday while I was streaming, I had to end stream early just because the wig band was giving me such a headache. Ugh. You gotta tuck those little combs in so you secure it. Okay. And do something like that. And make sure we actually comb it out. Alright, so this needs to be balanced out. Because without a dark lipstick, this feels weird. It's got kind of like a nice soft little shimmer to it. Alright, so I'm just about ready. I'm going to be going live soon and to do some streaming, do some gameplay, possibly some Assassin's Creed Mirage, quite possibly, but there we go. It's so pretty. Oh, ombre fades. I absolutely love them. So that was our little experiment in color for the day. I feel really pretty, soft, pretty, but also vibrant pretty. That's kind of like what I like to go for, is like very vibrant, but also still like soft pretty in its own way. But yeah, thank you for hanging out with me as I was doing all of this to my face parts, hanging out for little discussion on modesty, modesty and purity. And yeah, I'm interested in hearing your thoughts about all this and possibly other subjects that you see in my content that you might like to hear more about. I'm more than happy to take some time to expand on those. And of course, I'm hoping like just as I start pursuing this, maybe it'll also encourage other people who are interested in makeup, regardless of like gender, regardless of like if you're older. Like I'm learning all of this. I started learning makeup in like my late 20s, so I think this is stuff where I'm like, hey, like this makes brain go brrr, and brain go brr is not limited to, it's not limited to gender, it's not limited to age. It's something to have fun with. So of course, remember, drink your water. Go drink some water too, except I'm pretty sure my chat will redeem plenty of hydrates for me. So yeah, remember your water, remember to do good things for yourself that make your brain go brrr, regardless of if it's makeup or not. Of course, as is House of Course tradition, here is a boop for the road. And I will see you guys in the next one.